I'm in America in the 1950s, and from here, it almost feels like the future has already arrived. The houses are new. The cars are shining. There's a television glowing inside the living room. For millions of Americans, this was the dream. A home, a family, a job, a life that looks safe. But the closer you look at this perfect picture, the more you start to notice the cracks.
After World War II, the United States did not simply return to normal. It built a new version of normal, one made of suburbs, highways, supermarkets, television sets, and promises that tomorrow would be better than yesterday. For many Americans, that promise felt real, but it was never the whole story. The American dream of the 1950s had a very clear image. It looked like a small house outside the city, with a car in the driveway and a lawn that had to be kept neat. It looked like children playing in the street while their parents believed they had finally reached something stable. For families who had lived through depression and war, this was powerful. The world had felt uncertain for so long. Now, suddenly, the future seemed organized. A mortgage, a washing machine, a refrigerator, a television. Not luxury for the few, but comfort for the many. At least, that was the promise. This dream did not appear by accident. It was built by policy, industry, advertising, and a growing economy. New homes went up quickly. New products filled stores, new roads connected suburbs to cities, and everywhere, America was being told the same thing. This is what success looks like.
It's strange. Everything here feels designed to make people feel like they made it. The house, the lawn, the car in the driveway, it all feels like proof that life finally worked.
The car became more than a machine. It changed the size of everyday life. A family could live farther from the city. A teenager could meet friends at a drive-in. A weekend could become a road trip. A highway could feel like freedom. America was spreading outward, and the car made that movement feel natural. In the 1950s, the steering wheel became part of the dream itself. It was not only about where you could go. It was about who you were becoming. Modern, independent, comfortable, American.
I have to be honest, I probably would have loved this. The cars, the neon, the music. It feels like the future is young, loud, and full of possibility.
But the decade was not only built in quiet suburbs, it also lived under neon lights. In diners, drive-ins, soda fountains, and jukebox corners, a new kind of youth culture began to take shape. Teenagers had more visibility than before. They had music, money, style, and places where they could gather away from their parents. To adults, it could seem loud, too fast, too rebellious. But to young people, it felt alive. The 1950s wanted order, but under that order, something younger was already pushing against the walls.
This is the part people remember with nostalgia. The music, the cars, the lights, and honestly, I understand why. There's energy here. It feels like everyone is waiting for the world to become bigger.
Inside the home, the future looked smaller, not less important, just more personal. It was in the refrigerator humming in the kitchen, the television set in the living room, the washing machine promising to save time, the radio, the sofa, the dinner table, the clean floor. Advertising did not just sell products. It sold a way of life. The ideal family appeared again and again. A father returning from work, a mother keeping the home, children safe inside a world that looked calm and controlled. It was a powerful image, but it also came with rules, because every perfect room had expectations built into it. Who should earn? Who should cook? Who should smile? Who should be grateful? The house promised comfort, but it also taught people how they were supposed to fit inside it.
People here are almost suspiciously nice. I asked for a quick look inside and now I'm sitting on their couch like I live here. Maybe that's 1950s hospitality. Or maybe I just found the friendliest family in America.
But the America shown in advertisements was not the America everyone lived in. The prosperity was real. The new homes were real. The optimism was real. But access to that dream was deeply unequal. For millions of Black Americans, the 1950s was still shaped by segregation, discrimination, and barriers that reached into schools, voting booths, workplaces, and neighborhoods. Even the dream of a house could be guarded by invisible walls. Some suburbs were built not only around comfort, but around exclusion. The clean streets and matching houses promised belonging, but not to everyone. That is what nostalgia often removes from the picture. It remembers the shining car, but not the family who could not buy the house beside it. It remembers the perfect kitchen, but not the people who were never invited into the perfect neighborhood. The American dream existed, but it had gates.
When you stand here, you realize the 1950s were not one America. They were several Americas, living side by side.
And even inside the dream, fear was never far away. The Cold War lived quietly in the background of ordinary life. Children practiced what to do if the unthinkable happened. Families heard warnings about fallout shelters and survival. The same country that imagined a bright, modern future also lived with the fear that everything could vanish in an instant. That tension is what makes the 1950s so fascinating. It was not simply a golden age. It was comfort with pressure underneath. Confidence with anxiety behind it. A perfect smile in a world that was learning to fear the flash.
This looks like an ordinary school hallway, but then you see the signs: fallout shelter, civil defense, a radio waiting for warnings. The fear here is quiet, but it never really leaves.
So was the American dream of the 1950s real? Yes. For many people, life really did improve. Homes became reachable, wages rose, consumer goods became common, cars changed the country, television changed the home. Millions of Americans felt they were moving upward into a life their parents could barely have imagined. That part should not be dismissed. But the dream was also edited. It left people out. It narrowed people's roles. It hid injustice behind clean lawns and smiling advertisements. It promised perfection in a world that was never perfect. And maybe that is why the 1950s still hold so much power. They were not simply fake. They were beautiful enough to believe in, and incomplete enough to question.
I came here expecting to see the American dream. And I did. The homes were real, the cars were real, the optimism was real. But so were the limits, the fear, the pressure, the people left outside the picture. Maybe that is the truth about 1950s America. It was not a perfect world. It was a beautiful image with cracks underneath. If you want to see more moments like this through my eyes, subscribe, and I'll take you to the next place where history still feels alive.